My name is Apollo Woods. I'm your host for the Bigger Than Food podcast. We have episode 2. So we have an exciting host. This is our first time talking on live and in person. So y'all give a round of applause virtually where you are. You can clap your hands, do what you got to do for Chef Curtis. Come, Chef Curt. Great personality, great food. The guy's doing his thing as a private chef that is now in Oklahoma. I say he's in North Oklahoma City. We're going to claim you in the North Oklahoma City area. So Chef, let the people know who you are. Let's talk about your story and let's get into some of this food journey. So tell people who you are.
Gotcha. So as you stated, my name is Curtis Hopkins, but most people call me Chef Curt. I'm from South Carolina, born and raised. Hometown is Sumter, South Carolina, but I tell people most people would know me for Charleston, South Carolina. That's where I really was able to get started with my business and just really get a lot more exposure. That's where I went to school at the Culinary Institute of Charleston. So that's when I was really introduced to the low country flair, the Gullah Geechee cuisine, and all of the good seafood, the good, like I said, just that whole vibe. It's a different culture out there, and I definitely it needs to be highlighted as much as possible because what they're doing out there is very special. So moved out to North Oklahoma City, as you say, in early August of last year. So I'm still very, very fairly fresh to these Oklahoma streets. Haven't lived anywhere else but the East Coast. So still getting acquainted with this area, but I'm all about just experimenting and traveling. And, I want to ultimately learn as much about food as possible. So super excited to just learn about Oklahoma and surrounding areas and how they do food.
That's good, man. All right, let's back up a little bit. So you're from outside of Charleston, and
correct.
Charleston would be considered the number one travel city in the United States. A lot happens in Charleston, but there's a lot of rich history, food culture in Charleston. But I'm curious to know, how did you get into food? Like, what is it about? Talk to us about what inspired you about food to want to become a chef and go to culinary school.
Okay, awesome. So, long story short, man, I'm gonna keep it as short as possible. But I grew up in a single household, and my mom wanted me to still have a Black role model, someone to look up to, a positive figure, while still being, like I said, just being at home while not having my father in the home. And one of those outlets ended up being I'm not familiar if you're familiar with a chef named G. Garvin. He used to have a TV show, Cooking Up with G. Garvin. And I really started watching that. And it just really inspired me to continually try new things. I would take the dishes that he was making, and I couldn't afford heavy cream, but I had that 2% milk, whipping that pasta up, he was making shrimp linguine. We had spaghetti noodles, 2% milk, and some chicken breasts in the freezer. So, it just started for me really doing that, just trying to help my mom out. She, like I said, single mom working at a bank, and I just really started to try to have dinner ready for her before she got home. And lo and behold, that actually grew into a passion. Yeah. And quick side note, man, I'm actually, like I told you, I'm actually streaming live from Atlanta right now, where G. Garvin is from, and I actually had the honor of dining at his restaurant and meeting him in person last night. So
yeah, he was one of the. I remember him because he was one of the first. I guess that comes to mind. One of the first Black chefs you see on TV. And I'm really big on like promoting Black chefs and Black food and Black culture. So seeing him online was pretty huge because you see him and doing different impacts now. But like going back a little bit further. So you talked about this beautiful story about this relationship between you and your mom, and you wanted to be helpful to your mom. But what was it about food? What made you say, like, man, we don't have heavy cream, but if I churn this milk a little bit more or mix a little bit more, put it on heat, it turns into cream. But what is it about? Do you remember when you got excited about cooking?
Well, I've been in the kitchens ever since as early as they remember, 6 or 7 years old. And I mean, if I'm just being really truly transparent, I mean, it's just me being a fat kid. Like, I didn't want to have to wait for nobody else to go in the kitchen and make me nothing. It really started with my grandma. She used to make something called banana pancakes, and that always trips me out. you see commercialized places, a banana pancake with sliced bananas on top, and that's not what I'm talking about. She would it was a way to repurpose over ripened bananas. So she would always have bananas every week sitting outside, and any ones that started to turn black, she would mash it up, mix it into the pancake batter, and make us what is now our iconic family banana pancakes. So that's really one of some of the earliest roots that got me really into cooking for myself.
It's interesting that we talk about how we just take food and are resourceful with it. I'm from a large family. My grandma, my grandfather, my mom's side had 12 kids. So the last count, there's like 47 grandkids. So there wasn't a whole lot of food and refrigerator around, and we didn't go grocery shopping a lot. I mean, you really used what you had. Being that you're from low country, like, what is low country? I mean, when I think of low country, I think of like the bottom of something. I'm not really sure exactly what low country really means other than what I've heard and read. So what is low country cuisine coming from the East Coast and the Carolinas?
Got you. So low country for me, essentially, if you look it up, it's really just going to specify cuisine that's really pretty much used within the Carolinas, that was pretty much established within the Carolinas. So, and a lot of our pretty much localized ingredients that we use is like fresh okra, tomatoes, Carolina gold rice, things of that nature, like things, like any other area, things that grow in abundance. So that's what a lot of our dishes are around. Lots of pork in our dishes. With us being on the East Coast, us being pretty much a harbor, everywhere I've lived, I've always been 30 minutes to an hour away from water. So includes a lot of fresh fish, crab, oysters, things of that nature.
So what is Gullah Geechee then?
Gullah Geechee. So Gullah
Geechee. I've heard that there was a time period where if you and honestly, and I think about it now, that the term Geechee could be considered offensive.
Right.
But Gullah Geechee is a people, is a culture. It's connections to and mother country in Africa. So that's what comes to mind for me, because this soul connection to food, and they talk about seafood and rice and etc. But from you living in the culture and you being from the region, what is Gullah Geechee?
Okay. Gullah Geechee for me is way, like, outside of everything I just kind of explained. It's just really a deeper, richer heritage behind, like you said, not just kind of Americanized cooking, but really the influence of the West African area, and things that they used to do, like jollof rice. They get into like the Sea Island peas and red rice. It's just really way more of. It's really hard to describe it, because when you really talk about Gullah Geechee, it's not even really just food. It's the culture. Like I said, it's the paintings. It's the it's
a language.
It's a language. Like it's a whole culture. And it's really also connected to the Creole. Like a lot of things, Gullah Geechee is really closely similar to what's going on in New Orleans, with that type of like gumbo. Like really like gumbos and stews. Like I said, they really, I wouldn't say, because I don't want to offend nobody, I wouldn't say hand in hand, but you could really call it pretty much brother and sister. Like pretty much, if you've heard how people talk in New Orleans, Louisiana, it would sound very similar to you listening to Geechee Gullah talk.
Right. Hey, I don't know if there's somebody near you, but I'm getting a little echo feedback from a phone line or whatnot. There's like two things going on.
Okay.
But like when I did some research on Gullah Geechee culture, a lot of it, rice is a huge part of the cuisine of the culture, and there's language there too. So let's fast forward to when you decided that you wanted to go to culinary school. Do you remember that moment where you were like, you know what, I'm good at this, but I want to learn more. I want to learn the craft and skill of a chef, and decide to go to culinary school? Do you remember what that moment was for you?
I grew up in church. I've always essentially known, like I said, from a young age, I've been cooking. And I just remember being at a service one day, and there was a prophet in town, and he was really just saying, like, these guys don't know nothing about you, but they know stuff about you. And he just was saying, like, hey, I see you owning, 3 restaurants one day.
Wow.
And honestly, that's really all I needed. Like, ever since then, my life has been solely geared to just pursuing culinary and being the best that I could be in the area. Like, I don't like the word GOAT. I feel as though there's many greats. Like, there's not just one. I just do my best to portray and put out this gift that God has given me the best way that I can. To not just to boost myself, but to also continue to influence, just how G. Garvin influenced me at a young age, to begin cooking, to just be able to be an influence to any other people, any other young people, but definitely young Black people that may be interested in culinary, because a lot of people that are interested in culinary get shade away from it just because parents might not think that it's a real profession, or we just eat. That's not really a job. And I'm like, yeah, we out here doing it. Like, don't you don't get it twisted. So
yeah. What would you say some of your big influences in chefs? Like, if you were to name, like, here are my top 5. These are my top 5 influence chefs. They can be current day, they can be past, it can be somebody that you knew that we don't know anything about. Like, what would you say you're like, these are my top 5 powerhouses of Black chefs?
Okay. It's gonna slim down when you put Black chefs on there, because, like, as you're saying, it's been an epidemic for a while.
It can be 3. It's cool.
Yeah. So definitely, like I said, G. Garvin is definitely at the top. Current day, someone that I get a lot of inspiration from would be a chef out of Spartanburg, Greenville area. His name's Stephen Beatty. He's been featured on the Food Network twice. He does beautiful, immaculate carvings, and just his perception on food, like how he breaks down, like even going into creating a dish, how his mind works is differently. He starts with the colors. Yeah. Like, he doesn't necessarily start with the food. He starts with the color and the presentation of how he wants it to look. And just his understanding of food is definitely inspiring. I probably say my next one would be another peer of mine, was just Tony Chef Dotson, Michelin star chef, also a Food Network champion. And I love food, but that guy loves food on a different level. Like, I'm very much going to give you an elevated, or what I like to call sophisticated Southern cuisine. So, comfort food with, fine dining spin on it. But this guy likes to take it to the next level and will serve you one item 6 ways on the same plate.
Yeah, I've noticed that there's a lot of echoes from somewhere. I've noticed that people have an opinion about how Black chefs perform. Because when you think about African American cuisine, it's heavily tied to soul food. And soul food definitely does get a bad rap. You can't fault people for taking something that was given to them. Sometimes it was scraps, but then when you further dig into what was given to us on plantations, some of that also came from from tribal, from being in the tribe, from being in Africa, that was applied here, because the only reason why there's rice is because rice being harvested is because of African people. When you think about okra is not indigenous to America. So okra came here, and this is I'm not gonna say the movie, I'm not trying to promote, but when you think about if you really take a detailed look at movies that depict slavery, and women braided their hair. So braiding their hair was more of a function of not just preserving their hair, but they
Right.
would weave in seeds of okra, and they would weave
Mm-hmm.
in as they come across
Right.
those horrible conditions on those ships, and they
Right.
plant and harvest there because that's all they had.
Yeah.
Harvesting those seeds. So when we talk about the history influence of Black chefs in African American culture, it is deep. And now you look at now where people would poke fun at chitlins and pork belly and pig belly and bacon, and now pork belly is becoming a very common thing to use in
Oxtails.
recipes, right? Oxtails, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kale, throwaway food, greens.
Mm-hmm.
So now
Neck
greens are being
bones.
commoditized as in certain places. But
Mm-hmm.
what is your take on how you've seen the evolution of the perception of Black chefs over the last, let's say the last 5 years? How do you
Okay.
think the evolution of the perception of Black chefs has evolved, good or bad or neutral?
Okay. Um, I think that it's becoming more of a popular trend. Um, it's no secret that this has not been an industry that we've been. Not that we haven't been in it, but we haven't been in the spotlight of it. Um, so I think within the last 5 years, it's become a lot more of a popular thing to see a Black chef. I think more people want to experience that. Just because, again, outside of food, we just come with a different type of swag. We come with a different type of energy, and of course, that gets transferred into the food, and just what we're able to present on the plate. Because food for me has always been art. It's not just what you eat or what you cook, but it's an art form. So I think as Black chefs are more introduced into the realm, and like I said, brought into the spotlight, it just brings way more of a cultural difference. Because even though we're all Black, we're all from different areas,
Yeah.
and what we all bring is a different swag to it. It's a different drip. So, no, I just think that it's definitely headed in a better direction versus in the past, where I feel like it's just almost been like a no, like not the look we're looking for.
Right. Yeah. It's like we're looking for comfort foods. It would change the way they describe the type of food they want. So now you got soul food, then now it's comfort food, and then it's home style, and now they
Right.
want something savory, or they want something. I'm like all these different buzzwords that come about.
Right.
I I've started to probably a couple of years ago. I noticed when I would go into restaurants that were not Black owned, the the response I would get when I find out that the chef was Black. Because when you're back in the kitchen, you don't see people.
Right.
You don't really see who's back in the kitchen. Every once in a while, you kind of peep and see. And so I started being intentional about, like, if I saw maybe it was a line cook or a sous chef that was Black, I would ask, are there any Black chefs or cooks working in the back? And remember the first time I asked, hey, can you go get the chef for me? And I was at a local restaurant and came out, and he was shocked. Because especially when you're talking about here in Oklahoma, where we're 5% of the state population, you don't see a lot of us. You become conditioned to be unseen.
Right.
And then when I came out, I said, "Hey man, this is who I am. I want to take a picture with you." And it went from shock to, like, it was that look of someone finally saw me. They were my dishes that people are actually eating.
Right.
Have you felt that before?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a part of what we do is for the acknowledgement of who we're doing it for. I just recently finished up with an opportunity that I have been in the past couple of months where I just kind of felt that difference. It kind of made me realize what I really want out of this and what I don't, which is, I really want to cook the food that I want to cook, the food that really speaks to me. And not only when I do that, I'm looking for a certain response. If it ain't good, tell me it's not good. But, if I put my heart into this and I know that this is something, which is everything that I do, I'm looking for a certain level of acknowledgement. Not that you got to kiss my tail, but, it's a certain level of appreciation to say, like, hey, like, you're talented. I can tell that this isn't just a job for you, but this is something that you've dedicated your life to. You put the time into it. You've sacrificed, and you've done what you needed to do to perfect or master this skill that you have.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to see people respond when they it because of media. The perception is everything that we cook is fried and smothered in some gravy or something.
Facts.
But it's also a whole level of ignorance when you're like, so you mean like black people don't eat sushi? Or you mean like we don't eat sea bass? Or it's not catfish? Or there's a steak? Or even vegetarian or vegan?
Right.
The surprise of ignorance that comes upon people's faces, sometimes it's surprising, but how I look at it is it's an opportunity to showcase the skills of black chefs.
Correct.
So even in our journey in, promoting and advocating that my chef is black hashtag, there's a lot of responses that have come with that I've learned to temper my responses because people just haven't seen it.
Right.
So I get really excited when I find a black chef that's doing great work, that's worked really hard because they deserve to be recognized. So now that you are, well, not now, but you're working as a private chef, what's been the most fun part of being a private chef?
Man,
and let me clarify. I want the people to understand.
Yeah.
Like, this is a chef that went to culinary school. No slight on anybody else that went through traditional ranks or didn't. That's not culinary trained. You don't have to be culinary trained to be an amazing chef.
Not at all.
But to take that next step to go from being culinary trained and to go from there to learning skills and working in different places and restaurants and whatnot, and now becoming a private chef, what has that been like for you in Oklahoma?
Okay.
You can be honest. Like, this is not like one of those you got to be filtered and you're responsible.
Yeah, politically correct.
Yeah, this is not the PC conversation. I
got you. No, it's been it's definitely been interesting just to see just the way that the response that I get from people trying my food. I don't think of it, I always think my food is good or however you want to say that, but just the take that people get from, again, like, I'm just not from around here. Like, the things that y'all might be used to, the flavors that y'all might be used to, the techniques that are just here. I'm bringing such a different experience to the table. Yeah. So it's been pretty fun, honestly. I've been more outside of Oklahoma when it comes to private chefing than I have in Oklahoma just yet. Don't seem like I can say that the market still has room to grow for a private chef here in Oklahoma. I just don't think that many people, I don't think many people really grasp the idea of what it means. So I've been doing a lot more in Texas. I was just in Missouri the weekend before, cooking for 30 people. So it's fun. I've never been shy or weary away from being a part of like a pilot program, essentially. So yeah, I just kind of feel like that's where, when it comes to Oklahoma, that's where I'm at. Just kind of really teaching people what it means to hire a private chef.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because people will definitely say like, "Hey, I have this budget, and it's like $8 a person."
Yeah.
The cost of food and all that. Like, you don't really need a caterer. What you really need to do is go to a grocery store, get a bunch of party trays, and just swing it at that. So we have a question in the chat, and one of the questions is, what's your favorite dish to make that's quick and simple to learn?
I really go with pasta.
Okay.
Pasta, and I say, I know that's a generic statement, but I'll say Alfredo pasta. Okay. Again, one of those things that I learned from G. Garvin many, many years ago. Just because whether you have heavy cream, which is going to get it done quicker, and of course make it a little bit more luxurious with the fat content. I've done it plenty of times with whole milk, just to be cost efficient. And
so I got to put this out there though.
Yeah.
Like, in my earlier life of dating,
Mm-hmm.
they just always make chicken Alfredo.
Nice.
So it's a common thing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like spaghetti. But if
Right.
there's something else that you think that people may not consider that is simple and easy to make, that's not like your typical like an Alfredo or a spaghetti, but something just that can be really simple to make. And it doesn't even have to be something that maybe it doesn't have meat in it. Maybe it's a meatless meal. What comes to mind? I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. When it comes to quick, easy, and effective, I normally will go more towards like Mexican food, honestly. Taco, or either a taco or like a taco salad or a taco dip. That's definitely a favorite of my mom's growing up. She used to make like this layer taco dip, and again, nothing too hard. But also you got to know what you're doing to make it taste good. So
right. So I was watching this show on Netflix recently, and they were talking about Mexican food and Spanish food, and in the show, the host, who was Hispanic, I believe she was Hispanic, but the guest at that time was from Mexico, and they said the burrito is not originated from Mexico.
right.
I was like, what? But when they broke it down, they talked about how flour is not indigenous to Mexico. But even flour wasn't indigenous to Spain. So how did it get there? Through merchant trade and whatnot.
Right.
So it's interesting that so when you talk about something you would choose, I think the assumption would have been something that's more like close to us.
Right.
But when you think about food and how there's so much overlap, like corn is something that's indigenous to Mexico. There's a lot of corn things in Mexico. So the corn tortilla, not the flour tortilla, is something that's common.
Right.
But then when you think about how flour got there, different things, there's all this intersection in culture. So when you create a dish and your brain is going through the science and taste and profile of creating a dish, you're creating from the place of what does world food look like?
Right.
And how can I put that on the plate? So if you had your dream person to cook for, that's not a chef, who would that be, and what would you prepare for that person? Can't say Oprah either.
Let's see. I would probably say a dream person would probably have to be maybe Ty Tribbett.
Okay.
Big influence on my life growing up. Just always loved his energy. That's where I get a lot of my energy from, a lot of my bouncy, fieriness from. And I mean, I'm a seafood guy, which is kind of crazy living in Oklahoma now, because I was like, what does a landlocked state mean?
Yeah, we don't have a lot of fresh seafood here.
Yeah, it's tragedy. The research I should have done before I moved. I would definitely have to cook him up some seafood, whether that just be a seafood boil. I like to do layers, so I'm really big on surf and turf, whether I do a nice marinated, grilled, dry aged ribeye, top that off with either some king crab or some jumbo shrimp, or some scallops, some lobster. Like I said, I'm always gravitating towards the seafood because that's my thing. You never beat that with some roasted garlic. I do a lot of pretty much roasted garlic potatoes or smoked Gouda potatoes. Those are just kind of like how flavors that I like to highlight.
Yeah. Excuse me. So talk about this seasoning that you have.
Okay.
So you sent me some. I love it. And I actually let my mom try it, so she loves it too. So you go from your journey as a chef to now having a product.
Right.
What made you create a seasoning? And it's good. Like it's called Yes Sir. So it really like it's legit. Like it's not. I'm a big seasoning person. Yeah. So how did you get to the place you're like, I need to have my own seasoning?
Man, really just fell upon it. If I'm being completely honest, well, not fell upon it because of course God ordained it, but essentially a couple of years ago, I was executive chef over this big company, that is from overseas, and they make vans. They produce vans. And this plant was so huge that they had 3 different areas. They had the body plant, the paint shop, as well as the assembly shop, plus the admin building. So, young age, maybe 26 years old, I got hired to be the executive chef over that facility. And, this is a 3 plant or 3 all-day shift. They worked 3 shifts, which it never shut down. So I had 3 meal services all day, 5 days a week. And what I quickly learned is, this was COVID year, that, good help is hard to find. So what I did was I came up with this simple blend. What I love about my seasoning blend is it's really nothing too crazy. It's a lot of what, because of where how I come up, what a lot of people use. But God gave me the specific measurements, essentially, right, to make it blend perfectly, right? So just really came up with this seasoning blend that I was like, hey, what y'all not gonna do is work me all the time. Like, I need this food, because it's a representation of me, whether I'm there or not. They're gonna look back and say, hey, this is Chef Curt. So I came up with this blend. At that point, it had salt in it. So what I didn't realize, like I said, I did that, left there, and just ended up randomly being like, hey, let me just actually come up with a product, because I've always seen myself as more than a chef. I'm a brand. I'm a business. It's further than food. It goes further than food. So yeah, man, just ended up creating that, and the inspiration for it to take the salt out of it was just, again, knowing my people, knowing our struggles and our most common downfalls is, we mainly struggle with high blood pressure, diabetes, hypertension. These are things that are taking us out of this earth quicker than we need to. So just decided to really, like, hey, if I'm going to do this, I never want to be like anybody else. I'm always going to be, cut against the grain. So I was like, hey, it's enough random, regular seasonings out here. How about I focus on a salt-free line that still allows people to have good food, but they can still monitor their health. You don't got to worry about shaking it because you want it to taste better. Yeah. But then every time you shake, that's your blood pressure going up.
Yeah. And salt was used in a different way back then. Salt was used in a way to preserve.
Right.
And the more I started getting into, different seasonings, and when people talk about the reason why they don't choose certain foods or choose to make certain changes in their food taste or their lifestyle is because they feel like they're missing the flavor. Uh-huh. And when I started seeing here comes the low sodium craze and here comes the no salt craze in there, uh-huh, it wasn't so much that I needed to exclude salt from my meals, but when I'm having certain brands of salt that we all use, uh-huh, and I'm layering it on, it becomes more salty. Right. And what I love about your seasoning is that I can have all the flavors I need and don't use salt. But even when you look at indigenous cooking, and that's whether it's African people or whoever you talk about as an indigenous cooking, is salt was used to preserve, and they use herbs. Correct. They use simple ingredients. I remember these are the ingredients my grandmother would usually have in her pantry. All seasoning, uh-huh, pepper, garlic powder, uh-huh, onion powder.
Yep.
And I think she may have had garlic salt too. She probably had 5 different ingredients.
Yeah.
And that is it.
Yeah.
And now you look at my pantry, I probably have, it's an easy 60 different seasonings in the pantry. And one thing that I want to stress on what you said is Katina says, speaking of health, do you cater to vegan dishes or enjoy or dislike?
Oh man, definitely. The vegans got to eat good too. What we got to stop doing is punishing people who have decided to discipline themselves through their mouth. And depends on your belief or your thoughts. Some people might not think, but these are healthier options for people. It gives you longer life. So no, I definitely do not mind. I never mind catering vegan or coming up with vegan dishes. I actually have people that are waiting for me to drop pretty much a vegan cookbook, wanting me to do more vegan content. So, and it's a lifestyle that I'm looking to go towards. It's just, it's tough.
I think Oklahoma is definitely a meat place.
Exactly.
And I think, you know, when you look at how we eat, I mean, America is a very gluttonous
Oh yeah.
food culture. So meat wasn't always a part of every meal.
Right.
And then at the same time, in my familiarity with, you know, vegan restaurants and chefs, it's the, how do I say, sometimes there's shame from the vegan community for not being vegan that makes it difficult for folks to transition. So we take food shame and guilt out of food itself, then we have a better relationship with food, because food is supposed to give us the energy that we need to do to live our lives, not the other way around. But going back to the business part, you said that, you know, you're a business and you have a brand, and so you're very intentional with how you produce your content and showcase yourself. You have a seasoning line. Do you think? Our first question. Do you think that's something taught in culinary school or in the restaurant space of how to actually become a brand as a business, as a chef, and the multiple ways to do that? Because it seems like the product lines are, to me, it's probably 20, 30 years old in terms of chefs and product lines. But do you think that's something that's starting to be taught in culinary school or outside of culinary school in becoming a brand or a business as a chef?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't believe. It's been a while since I've been in culinary school. Not that long, but long enough. And when I was going through, I feel as though the culinary education industry is more in the business of creating more workers. They're looking to create pretty much people to work the line. And of course, you got to be chefs, but what I do, a private chef, caterer, that's not really what they're educating you on. Being independent, again, being a brand, which again means more than food. Yeah, I'm Chef Curt, but people know that comes with more than just, oh yeah, I can buy food from this guy. So I think that there definitely has to be way more education when it comes to just more of the avenues that are available if you have a passion for food. It doesn't always mean that you have to just be a line cook or a sous chef or a prep chef. You know, it's just so many different things that you can do as a chef to just express your art, express your gift.
And I love the fact that you relate back to talk about your passion and your purpose. And I have to talk about this because you are definitely someone that's come out of the church. I see a lot of you giving praise and honor to God for your purpose. You mentioned Ty Tribbett. You know, you've worked with some big names in the state of Oklahoma, especially doing some work in Tulsa. How does this fit? Where does food and your love of God and being a follower of Christ, how does that fit? Because I'm just gonna say it. So for me, when I say our mission's bigger than food, it's not about getting people butts and seats in the restaurants.
Right.
The only reason I'm doing OKC Black Eats is because December 26, 2018, God said I wasn't going back to work and I'm going to do this. No one was doing this work that I'm doing here then. Nobody was doing that.
Right.
And I think sometimes it seems that people shy away from acknowledging where their gifts come from and why they do what they do and the blessings that come from pursuing your purpose.
Right.
So how did food and your faith in God, how did they come together? How did food become your ministry for what you do?
Awesome. No, I love this topic. Essentially, like for a long time, yeah, I looked at me being, you know, a culinarian as just, you know, a means of income, and didn't realize how much that I was feeding people, not just physically but spiritually. Um, it's a transfer of energy. So I've noticed if I'm having a bad day, probably not the best day for me to be cooking because it's gonna be that energy is gonna be transferred, and it might not be that the food is nasty, but it's not gonna be at the level of excellence that I know that he's given me to perform through. And like I said, just more recently realizing that, this isn't just a business. This is my ministry. This is the gift that God has given me to put me in certain rooms, put me in certain areas to be able to, minister. People can feel my love through the food. You never know what people are going through. So even me just preparing something out of love, serving it to them out of love, treating them with kindness, you never know how much effect that can have on a person's life. And like I said, I just know that I've been called to not just feed people physically, but spiritually. So the conversations that I'm able to have when I'm in my clients' homes with them, even if it's nothing too deep, even if it's just to show them my walk.
So, how'd you get to Oklahoma?
We talking about right now, man. I literally dropped everything. I had current businesses in South Carolina, and just really wanted to. I have been watching this church on YouTube called Transformation Church. I'll plug them because that's my people's. Have been watching them online, and for me, if you can orchestrate change in my life over across the screen, and I can feel His presence across the screen every single time, I'm just interested enough, and I'm just curious enough in my God to chase that versus chasing success. Because as a good book says, He'll give you the desires of your heart. So I just firmly believe that if I would choose Him and really pursue growing spiritually, that everything else that I desire in terms of my career would follow.
Has becoming an entrepreneur and taking that leap to leave the comfort of where you are to go into a place that's unfamiliar. I've been in my devotional time. Abram has been part of.
No, it's big Abram. It's big Abram. Yeah,
okay.
That's
Talk about that.
Says. Yeah, no, I mean that's really what I'm feeling. That's funny you brought that up. Like it's literally an Abram move for me, which he told him, I'm going to send you to a land that you do not know to possess it. And that's very much what I feel coming out here. No disrespect to any other culinarians, but I'm still looking for this culinary experience to wow me and knock me out my pants. And I haven't gotten it. And it just leads me to believe that, hey, again, like, because you're bringing a different flair, a different taste, I've called you to this area to elevate this culinary scene.
I'm glad you said that. And I'm born and raised in Oklahoma, and I lived in Houston for almost 18 years before coming back. I was almost 36 years old coming back.
Okay.
And being in a big city or a popular city, there's a lot of people to access. There's a lot of resource in front of you, but you still have to compete for that attention in that space. And when I got back, it took me about 2 years to realize this. There's a lot of opportunity in Oklahoma. There's really a lot of opportunity in Oklahoma, but being a part of the quote unquote minority group or a smaller population of Black people, it does really stretch you and teach you how to exist in spaces and not look for affirmations. Are there other people like me present? And that's the part of ministry and being called to, and you're doing a bigger purpose. You're put in spaces that you are to grow and to develop, because there's somebody there that needs to see you. Right. There's a lot that comes with that. Like it is not easy, when when you sense microaggressions, when you see blatant prejudice and racist said to your face and you're treated like you are less than, that comes with a lot of ignorance in spaces like this. But at the same time, when you're doing things that are purposeful, especially in your purpose, you will often find yourself in places of discomfort, because the pruning process is there to grow you, not to harm you at all. So we can go to a little church in there, but
most definitely.
But how is that working for Transformation Church? It is the hottest church around right now. Mike Todd is doing his thing in Tulsa. I would say right now, he's probably the Transformation Church is truly considered transformational in my opinion, and it's the biggest name that I hear about right now. So how was that working? Well, let me not assume. How was Transformation Church help you in your journey in culinary or making this Abram leap to Oklahoma? How has that been for you?
Let's see. It has been a stretching process. I mean, no one in the entrepreneurship world can say that it's easy. I don't think that you can be an entrepreneur and not have faith. You just might not be calling it faith, but you have to have a bit of crazy faith in order to walk this life as an entrepreneur. What I respect and honor about the man and God that I'm under and Mike Todd at Transformation Church is that he doesn't teach feel-good messages. He teaches sermons that really challenge you as an individual to grow. And if you want to grow, if you want to be successful in business, you have to grow. You cannot do things. You can't always continue to do things that you've always done. You have to be made new. You have to be transformed. You have to be transformative, and always also self-aware of what is going on around you. You have to know what the atmosphere is. Not that you conform to the atmosphere, but you must know what is going on and what's conducive so that you can, again, if you're in that mindset, continue to grow.
So Michelle Dedman said, what advice would you give someone who is starting or finding their footing in the culinary world? Let's
see. I tell people this all the time, and I know they get a little nervous about it. Man, you got to give it away, and not to say, pimp yourself out, but with the confidence, not the confidence, but the confidence that I have in myself and the abilities that he's given me. When I first started this back in 2015, he literally placed it in my spirit as a niche. He said, hey, this was before Uber Eats, this was before DoorDash and all of these things that we're so privy to now. Back when I started these businesses, there was the only thing you could get to eat delivered was a pizza. They used to do Chinese back in the day. That was lit. But you know what I'm saying? The good old days, right? You could only get a pizza delivered. So, him doing what he does, he gave me an idea just for me that no one else had my name on it. So I began to take food to dealerships, barbers, estheticians, makeup artists, things of that nature, bank tellers. And yeah, when I first started, if I'm being honest, nobody wanted to buy. I would make 15 plates and would maybe sell 2. And what ended up having to happen is, I promise you, instead of me going home with food, I was like, all right, check this out. It might be a loss today financially, but I'm going to leave these plates with y'all at this dealership. And I can promise you that next time I came back around, I had 15 buying customers. I had people willing to support because now they have sampled. We're in very much a sample world. Yep. People, everybody's not just going to support you off the cuff of the muscle. So, once I realized that, yeah, sometimes I got to give people a taste for free, what I'm saying? You're going to come back because you're going to actually now experience what I'm able to do.
That's a good question. I'm going to put a business twist on that.
Okay.
So essentially what you did was you created a lead magnet.
Mm-hmm.
So the function of a lead magnet is to grab attention and to get those customers into your sales pipeline. So when I worked in corporate America in oil and gas, we would deploy a product or service. We would look at a set of customers in a market, and then we would go meet with them and we give them these trials, these free trials. Because once we started getting them to use that service, it becomes a part institutionalized in their space. So now they don't want to go without it.
Right.
Then that leads to, well, the trial is about to end. If you want to continue using it, you got to buy it.
Right.
So I put that twist on people when you're factoring in launching your product, you have to build up an audience base if you don't have it.
Right.
So factor in how much of my product and my cost can I give away?
Right.
Because I'm giving it away, not just because I want to have just anybody trying my food.
Right.
But am I getting my product in front of buying people to try it?
Correct.
Because like you said, you're bringing a different flair and different taste that they haven't tried. They can't find that in a restaurant. They can't find you in that space. So the only way they're going to be able to get it is, hey, general manager, hey, coworker, hey, let's call Chef Curt because we want him to bring some more food back to us because he has great food that we haven't tried. Right. So as you're talking about what you did was you use your food as a lead magnet to create brand awareness about you as a chef new to the market, getting their contact information, and then when they place an order, now you have a customer.
Correct.
Now that turnaround depends on how fast you want to go back and visit that place. But the key is you knowing that you have a great product that tastes good and you put enough sample that you can afford in front of them. So I think that was a great way for someone who wants to try. And then I would take it a step further for those who want to dive into whether it's culinary world or anything else.
Right.
You have to get the technical ability.
Oh, yeah.
You have to learn about packaging. You have to learn about presentation. If you don't like people, you can't sell anything.
You can't.
The only reason why you can get customers is you have to be able to sell something.
Right.
So there are free resources, whether it's at a tech center or finding a mentor or just asking a lot of questions because you're going to be on this constant journey of learning something new.
Correct.
So that's definitely great advice for someone who is trying to get into the culinary world or launching a product or service. You got to factor in how much of this can I give away to create new customers.
Right.
And as we start to wrap this conversation up, and I definitely appreciate you taking some time while you're on vacation in Atlanta.
Yes,
well, no, folks from Atlanta don't say the T; they say Atlanta.
Oh yeah,
they don't say the first T. Atlanta.
Yeah. It's a lingo, Atlanta.
Atlanta. So, what is next for you? I get this question a lot, and people are surprised at what I tell them.
Right.
But what's next for you? Because you're operating your purpose. What's next? Or do you know what's next?
Man, I was about to say, like, I again, man, everybody just don't get it. But I really try my best to be spirit led these days. So as much as I have plans and aspirations for myself, I'm really just staying submitted to God to see what it is that He wants me to do. Because we could do things in our own strength, and either they could be mildly successful or they can be not successful at all. So in this season, as I'm literally in a transition between, like I said, my last job and jumping back into full-time entrepreneurship, it's really just a season of just trying to listen. I know that I've done this business model in 2 other cities now, and it's been successful. But I never want to be confident. I want to be Godfident, which means knowing that this is something that He's given me to do here in this city. So definitely looking to continue to expand the private chef business. Like I said, continue to educate people on that. Definitely continue to hit these streets, start supplying these streets with food. I call it plate plugging, to actually give people the taste. You don't have to hire me as a chef, but you can still experience me on a more of a daily pocketable budget, and really just continue to hit this internet by storm. I see everything that everybody's doing. We've definitely become more into a cooking demo era when it comes to food. But I still, as he always does, I still see the niche as to what people aren't doing.
Right.
So in this next season, I'm definitely working on what I'm going to be doing visually. Like I said, to not be chasing and pursuing after anybody else, but to be going for the things that I know God has my name on.
Yeah. It's always, it might be more challenging, but finding the lanes where there's less traffic in the long game is the best place to be.
Oh, yeah.
I look at it as getting the HOV lane. Everybody's on the freeway. Everybody's in that traffic. But getting the HOV lane, 40 miles an hour, 55 miles an hour, you're passing up everybody else because you're in that HOV lane. All right, Chef, as we get ready to close this conversation, how can people find you? You talk about all this great food, teasing people with this low country Gullah Geechee culture and seafood and garlic and flavor and all you're doing. So how can people find you to follow you on social media, or if they're wanting to buy your seasonings, seasonings, how can people get in touch with you?
All right, Beth. So it's a couple different avenues. Like I said, I try to keep it consistent. So website is the best option in terms of booking, private chef and inquiries. That's where you can also find my seasonings. I offer free websites online, and I'm also looking to expand that soon to even offer more. But people can find me at www.cookingwithchefcurt.com. And social media tags, you can find me on Instagram at Chef Curt 100. And what was the last one more I lost? TikTok, because that's really important one these days. Would be just cooking, just Chef Curt, or Kitchen Clown, which if you use my tag.
Cool. I put the URL in the comments, so that you see it on the screen there too to be able to find you. So awesome. Y'all just make sure that you're following Chef Curt on social media. If you're in Oklahoma or you're outside of Oklahoma, he's a private chef. He will travel. You will definitely enjoy what he has to offer. And we as OKC Black Eats are definitely looking forward to getting you incorporated into the Black Chef Society things and Dinner in Black. We got a lot of things coming. You've been validated.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Brother KJ, Black Food Fridays. It's like, hey, you got to connect with that guy. So we'll definitely get you more incorporated into what we got going on here in Oklahoma City and across the state as well. I mean, I excuse me, I enjoyed this conversation. I'm glad we got a chance to connect. This time, this won't be the last time we're having a conversation.
Yes, sir.
But we'll let you get back to your vacation and enjoy your time. And when you get back, man, let's get together, get some food or some coffee or something.
Let's do it.
All right, man. Take it easy.
Yes, sir.
All right, good people. As we close out episode 2 of the Bigger Than Food podcast, that was Chef Curtis Hopkins from South Carolina. I learned a bit about what he does or his inspirations. And if you, as you watch the replay or listen to the replay, you hear how he talked about his inspiration won't be helpful to his mom. When we're finding the things we're doing and in our purpose, there's this inspiration of why we start doing things that drive us. But he is not just a chef, but he's an entrepreneur. He's a businessman. He has a product and a service, and he's pursuing his passion and dreams. And I'm certain, excuse me, that he is going to do amazing work in Oklahoma and beyond. So watch this replay. Do us a favor and leave us a comment about the podcast. Share it with your friends. Listen to the replay. But tune in next Thursday at 12 noon Central Standard Time as we bring on another guest. It might be a DJ, might be another chef, might be just an amazing business owner or leader in the community. You never know what we have on the Bigger Than Food podcast. Thank y'all for tuning in, and we will definitely see you next Thursday at 12 noon Central Standard Time.